You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 50. Woot woot!
Woot woot!
Our podcast is as old as I am, kind of, in podcast years.
Numeric terms.
Podcast episodes. All right, that's right. I'm 50. I'm Sally O'Malley. 50.
Did Sally O'Malley get a movie spinoff?
I don't think she did. She deserves one. I would love to see that one. I think Mary Catherine Gallagher got one.
That Deb and Star go to Del Mar or something. Maybe they used up the Molly Shannon chip on that.
Oh, Molly's doing all right.
Hope so.
All right. We are discussing salmon fishing.
Salmon fishing.
In the Yemen.
It's not a hillbilly film.
It's not. We are discussing Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, a 2011 film directed by Lasse Hallström, starring Ewan McGregor, Emily Blunt, and Amr. Maybe that's supposed to be Amir. Nope. Amr. M-A-R. How would you say that? Probably not Amr.
How would you spell it?
A-M-R.
Yeah, it's probably Amir that just dropped the letter, would be my guess.
Yeah. I'm looking at IMDb right now, so I know it's not a typo.
Right.
The writer is Salmon Beaufoy, Paul Torde, and Fouad Al-Kriz.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to all of those people that I butchered their name. I apologize.
IMDb should have phonetic pronunciations.
Absolutely.
Right?
Completely agree. This film is about a fisheries expert is approached by a consultant to help realize a sheik's vision of bringing the sport of fly fishing to the desert and embarks on an upstream, see how they did that, journey of faith and fish to prove the impossible possible. And coincidentally, the tagline is, make the impossible possible. So, Mike, how does this film kick off? What's our pickup line?
Dear Dr. Jones, I act on behalf of a client with substantial funds who has indicated a desire to sponsor a project to introduce salmon and the sport of salmon fishing into the Yemen.
So that is, I believe, we hear VO of Emily Blunt's character,
yes.
Harriet,
right,
speaking those lines.
So this really just sets up the premise of the film. It doesn't really tell us kind of the through line or the topic of the film. It's just giving us the setting.
Mm-hmm. And Ewan is portraying Dr. Alfred Jones, who is not as cool as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
No, not quite.
He's a little bit of a stuffed shirt, would you say?
Oh, I would say there's a nice shot opening with a wooden, like, antique bass viol case, which not just a cello. He has to play like a medieval or whatever older version of a cello. That shows that he's like super duper nerdy and stuffed shirty.
And so we go from that and we hear Emily, and she's with a very cute boy who is not Ewan McGregor, man, I should say. And they have a very cute interchange, and their relationship, you're like, oh, these two, are, I don't know, it was a sweet interaction between them. And then cut to Kristen Scott Thomas, who also is in the film and portrays the Prime Minister's secretary. And she's being awoken by a phone call, letting her know that there's a bombing in Afghanistan. She gets up, quickly runs to work, and basically asks her team, I need a good news story.
Okay. I'm not sure I can agree 100% with your police work there about the Bellamy, because I hated that character.
No, I have no opinion of the character. I thought their interchange, well, you want Ewan and Emily to end up together, but I thought their interchange was sweet. It was like a new relationship, and they were very cute together. You don't agree?
I'm just telling you how it landed with me. I actually made a note in the middle of the movie.
Please share.
That I hate that character.
Yeah, but
when they, again, don't worry about spoilers. We're just going to talk about stuff.
Let's lay it all out, Mike.
When they say that he has been taken captive, I'm like, good. Pitch him off the side of a cliff someplace. I don't like that guy.
How dare you?
I'm just telling you my reaction. And that's probably a testament to the incredible acting ability of Ewan McGregor that I so strongly identified with stuffed shirt Dr. Alfred Jones that I wanted that other guy off the cliff.
So I think the scene after that I thought was a very good show don't tell. We see Ewan playing darts in his office, which how many cubicles have you seen? Like cubicles that stop at most men's shoulders with doors.
I've never seen a cubicle with a door, but maybe things are different in England.
So he has a door, and on the back of this door to this very, not to the ceiling cubicle, but anyway, is his boss. It's a picture of his boss, and he's playing darts. And that guy then walks in and tells him that he has to answer Harriet's call, basically.
Right, take on this project. And I think the character of Maxwell, which is the press secretary played by Kristen Scott Thomas, is necessary to explain why he would do this, right?
Right. Because he's like from day one, you want me to do what in the middle of the desert? Are you crazy? This is impossible to bring enough water that we could salmon fish.
And we've already seen, they've established that he's not a thinking outside the box kind of guy.
Right.
He is very much within the lines.
By the book. So I thought what was really funny is he begrudgingly, and I can't remember what it is, the boss has something on him that makes him begrudgingly have to do this. Do you remember?
He's going to fire him.
Okay, that's a strong reason why you do what your boss says.
There's some form, and I'm sure because it's civil service that they have to fill out a form, but it was letting him go.
Yeah.
And he basically threatened him to lose his job, and Ewan's not happy. And there's a bit of, again, kind of show don't tell. The guy says, may I borrow your pen? And the boss says, no, it's a blah, 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 some sort of fancy fountain pen. Ewan grabs it anyway, he signs it, and then he really slams the desk hard with it. And if you have a fountain pen, that's the worst thing to do to a tip.
Oh, wow.
So he's really given the FU to his boss.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love it because then he goes and we see it's a wide shot. He's in a very big corporate building. The lobby, it's kind of like one of these where the lobby goes so high that you can see all the different floors. And he's sitting in one of these very Art Deco, kind of just silly rocking chairs that you sometimes see.
It's just a ridiculous chair. It doesn't serve the purpose of a chair.
It's like one solid piece of plastic. And when I say rocking chair, it's not at all like the front porch rocking chair.
The bottom is rounded so it doesn't, it almost looks like
an odd jelly bean kind of, and he happens to be sitting in it. And so he's rocking in it. So Harriet comes out to take him up to the office, and when he stands up, and I don't know if this was purposeful or it happened maybe, and then they wrote it in, but the chair keeps rocking because it's just this rounded shape on the bottom as they walk away, and I think even out of frame, and it's still rocking and it's kind of making the noise. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's such a cute little, or just a funny little period to the end of this whole interchange and how ridiculous this idea is, kind of.
Yeah, it shows it's the kind of place that prioritizes being cool or hip or fashionable over function.
Yes, yes.
And here's a guy who's talking this project, which is itself really impractical. It's kind of cool over function.
Yes, absolutely. So we get a little insight to the different characters. He has a scene with his wife where she accepts a job in another part of England, I believe, without telling him first.
Yeah, and we have this very, I don't know if you'd say funny, but this interesting way of showing that the relationship is not doing well when they are in bed, having just finished the thing that husbands and wives do. And she says, well, that should keep you for a while. And it's just, what? Wow.
Very loving.
Wow, yeah.
Very loving.
What a great lie back and think of England kind of moment.
Yes. And so that sets up how fish and fisheries are so important to him that when she tells him of this, he gets frustrated and he goes outside, and they have this beautiful pond with a little, sprite little fountain kind of coming up. And there's koi in the pond, and you can see his mouth moving, and he's speaking just under, audibly being heard. And he's frustratingly feeding the fish. He's just breaking off pieces and abruptly throwing him down to the fish. And he's talking to the fish. And he says, when I get nervous, I talk to the fish. And that comes up other times throughout the film. And so this is like a moment to let us know, oh, this is what he does. And kind of gives us some insight, I think, more to his character.
I think that the kind of person who uses fish as his confidants is also the kind of person that would be fairly passive. That character of Alfred is throughout the film fairly passive, right? And in particular, no spoiler, as he develops feelings for her,
For Harriet,
that he doesn't really do anything about it. And there's this really kind of almost English moment near the end of the film where one of them says, I think she says something like, it almost came off or something. And she says, well, I wasn't talking about the fish. And he says, well, neither was I. I mean, just this very, very, I don't want to say passive aggressive because it's not, but this hidden kind of way of speaking where he can't even directly say, I have feelings for you, right? So I thought that matched with that character very well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's almost like a nervous schoolboy sometimes.
Yeah.
When it comes to, matters of the heart, as they say.
And I think Ewan McGregor has that way about him, right? That kind of schoolboy, aw shucks.
Yeah.
And obviously, a handsome fellow does very well on screen, but he has a smile that I think matches with that kind of character.
Charms the pants off ladies.
Yep.
He's a cutie. Let's see. So then he flies to the Yemen and the sheik takes him out fishing. And there's a subtle little music cue. They begin kind of a score. And I realize like, oh, the sheik is kind of like waxing poetically, kind of explaining why he loves fly fishing and how he likes it because in stark contrast from people, fish don't see color. And you often don't think of sheiks in their robes out, and it was interesting. He kind of even said whether fish don't notice whether I'm in waders or not. They just, they're just there. Now they probably don't want to be caught, the smart ones.
Well, with catch and release, you put back the dummies. Yeah. So maybe they do want to get caught.
Well, with catch and release, you put back all of them.
Well, but in the old days, the ones who got caught weren't very smart and they didn't reproduce. But now they're probably all a bunch of adrenaline junkies. Maybe it's like fish jackass. Woo!
And shortly after this, Emily walks out in this beautiful black dress and we get the male gaze where he almost like notices Harriet for the first time.
Wait, what?
She's pretty and my wife is gone.
Yeah,
although
exactly.
I think it doesn't give the audience a feeling of he's cheating because it's almost like she left first, the wife.
Yeah, the wife very much abandoned him. And what I did like about the writing of that character is when she comes back, she pretty quickly susses out that he's like attracted to Harriet. And sometimes they write those characters as being kind of ignorant or unobservant. And so you would think if she was the person who left, she wouldn't care. So I thought that was realistic, though. She wasn't necessarily ready to just ignore it, right?
Yep. I kind of felt like, in a way, Harriet was a matchmaker for Dr. Alfred and the sheik because she kept kind of trying to kind of tell each other, oh, he likes to do this and he wants to do this. And she was helping. And at the same time, we see that she starts completing some of Dr. Alfred's sentences and he to her. So they're becoming so symbiotic that they're speaking almost literally the same language, except for Mandarin that she has to translate for him.
Right. My Mandarin is very rusty, she says, and then proceeds to speak adequate Mandarin with people from the Chinese Dam Project.
Right. That dam project. So they go to lunch together and he explains how he doesn't drink, which she's kind of like, once in a while you can let your hair down and have a drink. And he was just like, he's all business. And then she gets a phone call, which any film that has someone in the armed services who walks away from a table and gets a phone call and their face just loses all expression, we all know what that means.
Right. And in my case, I was cheering.
We obviously think the worst. And it turns out that her beau, Captain Robert Mayers, played by Tom Misson, he's missing. We don't know.
He's missing in action. So early on, for some reason, I got the hint of a pilot of some sort. But then other news stories talk about special forces. So then he's supposed to be SAS instead of a pilot. Or unless he's maybe, I know they have special boat squadron. Maybe listener Lee could help me out here. Do they have an equivalent for the SAS, like their own night insertion pilot kind of thing, where maybe he was both? But anyway, it was behind enemy lines. There is some sort of battle, and all of the British people were captured or killed.
Right. So she pretty much goes into mourning, not figuring. And you had mentioned, and I don't know if I was doing some research at the time, but you had mentioned a conversation between his mother and her. And so it was almost like they cut off
she's
communication with her as far as the army goes.
Yeah, so she was told she would be notified and she hadn't gotten any news, and she'd called, and we figure out from context, because we don't hear the other side of the phone call, that it's his mother. And you can tell from her side of the conversation that the mother basically said, "You're no one. He just met you. You don't get to be in the loop." Right. And so perhaps a viewer could argue about, well, why would she be this broken up over someone she had just met?
It was a new relationship they set up in the very opening scene.
And perhaps if a person didn't like that Robert character, they wouldn't buy that. But,
Poor Captain.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting. They do a split screen. And on the left-hand side of the screen is Ewan leaving a very rambly, very stumbly, almost rude.
Right. Yeah. Clumsy.
Yes. It's so clumsy. It's rude. He's like no feeling almost. Like, you promised, we have an assignment. I need your help. You're vital to this assignment. Why aren't you back at work? And on the right side of the screen is her. And I think she is in the fetal position on the couch. And so we're hearing this VO as if not in this modern day anybody hears, the machine.
Answering machine, right.
But I guess, what was it, in 2014, maybe they still did. But we hear him leaving that and we see her reaction. And it's obviously like she can't believe he's being so rude. And then he hangs up and we see his face drop and he realizes what an ass he sounded like.
Right. And this is a case, again, of by the premise, by the bit, that she would be that broken up over this whole thing. But I think it was necessary from a story perspective to show him. And at one point, she says something which I think falls in the category of could not be made today, even a few short 7 years later, is she accuses him of having what we Yanks would call Asperger's, and she calls Aspergers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would land the same way now. I think people might be a little less comfortable with kind of having that diagnosis of another person.
Well, I respectfully disagree, because I think she is frustrated that he's not showing her more compassion. And so she would maybe lash out and,
Oh, I think the character would. I was just talking from a filmmaking perspective. Would the audiences be a little put off by that?
Oh.
Yeah. But I do agree. I think he was behaving in a way that felt like he was emotionally disconnected. And
yes.
I could see a person, if they're hurt, saying that.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think it's safe to say this is probably one of our favorite shots of the whole film, but you weigh in and tell me if I'm wrong. He is walking in almost that stereotypical New York, even though this is London, I believe.
Right.
Shot, only it's shot from overhead. So you see the busy sidewalk, you see all the people. They're all going from the right side of the frame to the left side of the frame. And we see Ewan walk through the frame. And when he gets to about the left third, he stops. And I think it cuts to a shot straight on looking at him. And you see the expression on his face. He changes his mind. We go back to the overhead shot. And now he's going against everyone walking. He's now walking left to right as the frame goes, just like a
salmon swimming upstream.
I thought that was a cool shot.
Yeah, it really is. I agree. Another one of the shots, which is maybe less distinctive, but I thought was really important, is when Alfred is in Harriet's apartment at one point in time, he sees a thread on the couch, and we have an EC of him picking up the thread and putting it in his pocket. And the first time I saw that, it didn't strike me at all. But the next time around, I knew, oh, we're going to see this again someplace. And they talk about how he would tie flies. And I thought, oh, okay, well, now that makes sense. And then later in the film, he's tied a new fly, and he's famous for one before. That's kind of why the sheik knows him. And he names this one after Harriet. And he'd previously said he thought that was a little bit kind of pretentious to name your own fly. But then he shows how much he cares about her in his own awkward, perhaps has Asperger's kind of way, by naming this fly after her, which is not maybe the most romantic gesture, but for him, that's really important.
Yeah. And that was my very next note, is he comes to her apartment and he brings her a sandwich because he feels that she's probably not eating since she's kind of in this state of mourning. And then he takes the thread. And so they kind of have a conversation, and she realizes how much he does care for her. And she realizes, I think she needs to get back to work. So cut to them all stepping off of the plane in obviously a very Yemenis looking location. And I noticed that, how come is it in every film, whenever anybody goes to the desert, they all wear beige?
Right.
Every single person, except for I think the prime minister's wearing black, but everybody else is wearing beige.
So my question is whether that's a traditional thing or a filmmaking thing. It's possible that it's a British thing, right? Because in my mind's eye, I always see the intrepid British explorer in the khakis, which I always assumed was because it matched the color of the dust they would encounter. That was my thinking. But I'm thinking of another Emily Blunt joint recently, the Jungle Cruise movie. And I think everybody there who's like an adventurer wears beige of some sort as well. So maybe it's visual shorthand that audiences wouldn't buy it if he had on a tartan.
Although it would point out that he is a Scottish, he's in charge of the fisheries. And I don't think, although I'll get to it when we talk about locations, I think the reason that we picked this is we like this movie, but Ewan is a Scot. I don't know if this takes place.
Yes. So they establish that the sheik is so rich that he owns an estate in Scotland.
That's right. There is a scene.
Ewan, because we know this because Ewan says, I haven't been back in a while. And then he goes back to go fishing. So there is some of it is set in Scotland.
And they acknowledge that Dr. Jones is Scottish. Then if he says, I haven't been back in a while. Okay.
Right. But he's apparently so English, he's almost French.
And so then we have a montage of the build of the dam that will create the place. And they have this grainy like VHS footage. And so we have the montage of that. And then they have a beautiful moment where it's this gorgeous golden hour shot of Harriet and Alfred sitting by.
Oh, yeah, that is incredible shot.
And he shares about his wife that, she left and he's having to deal with it, and they have a quiet moment. And then the next scene kind of gives the viewer a little bit of a clue because there's some ominous music. So we see Ewan and the sheik fly fishing in this creek. And at first it's like, oh, this is this peaceful, serene shot. Why are we hearing ominous music? And then we see a man kind of creeping through the bushes, and Ewan thwarts an assassination attempt because he hooks the assailant with a right-handed fly cast.
Yeah, it was some sort of thing that I assume if you're a fly fisherman, you would understand the jargon, which I think between this and a river runs through it probably quintupled the fly fishing sales, right? Oh, and another one of our films, what's the Kevin Smith film?
Geez, how did my mind go blank? A Catch and Release.
Catch and Release. Yeah, it's right in the title. Hard to understand that film has fly fishing in it. But
So he's the hero.
He is a hero. Now, again, by the premise, by the bit, I've never been whipped in the face by a fly fishing thing, but I don't know that it would knock me down and prevent me from shooting the sheik. But it is important from a plot perspective to show that not everyone in the Yemen is totally down with this project.
And it also shows that Ewan doesn't need a lightsaber to be the hero.
You're right, but it is very lightsabery now that you bring it up. Can you use midichlorians to fish?
Are the Wookiees good fishers? So then she finds out that Robert is in fact deceased. And so she goes to her, and they were just starting to come together. And then she's reminded of the long lost Captain Myers has not made it. So he goes to her room to comfort her, and he talks to her until she falls asleep, and he stays there all night. But like a gentleman, he just laid there watching her sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very gentlemanly.
He comes home after that trip to the Yemen and finds his wife at home, but she can tell that he has fallen in love with Harriet.
As she called her, a short-skirted office girl, which is not quite accurate. I think she's a little bit above a short-skirted office girl. Mm-hmm. She's a short-skirted office manager.
And they have words, and I believe he goes back out and feeds the fish.
Yes.
Grumpily.
And at one point, Harriet says about Alfred, I knew you would have a pond. Something like that.
Right, that's right.
You're the kind of person who would have a pond.
Yep. So then we have they must fly back to the Yemen, because then we have another fishing, them stalking the fish. Oh, I think, like we see the big crane bringing in.
It's the big reveal, I think, for the project as a whole.
And so is it going to be a success? And they, put the fish into the water, and it's like, oh, are they going to go the right way? And everyone's kind of holding their breath, and they start to go downstream. And then all of a sudden somebody says, no, look. And we see them jumping up the ladder, and it's, cheers all around. Yay, it's going to work.
This was one of the pauses, I believe, because my question was, is there the equivalent of the Judas goat that they use to convince the sheep to go the way that the slaughterhouse wants? Like, can you have a Judas salmon where it's trained to swim in a certain direction and lead the rest of the salmon upstream?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
No way to know.
No way to know. So then the audience finds out that Robert is alive. And then there's a beautiful scene where they're swimming. Harriet and Alfred are swimming. It's kind of dusk-ish. And they hop up onto the rocks, and he says in his very analytical stuffed shirt way, is there a theoretical possibility of us?
Right.
And she kind of, it's still soon.
She says, not right now.
Right.
But
she gives him some promise, and I believe kisses him on the cheek.
Yes. Now, I was going to ask a question here about costuming. She goes swimming in basically her nightgown. And I mean, I could understand that you probably don't pack a swimsuit to go to the Yemen. It's not known for its aquatic adventures.
Although we are building a giant aquatic feature, you would think.
That is true. So it is possible. I just thought, like, is that a point of modesty where many people would say, well, no, I'll just go swimming in my nightshirt, as opposed to, I'm not saying she would go skinny dipping, but would she just, use the day's bra and panties?
Well, I was looking on IMDb, and it did mention something about a moonlight swim. So maybe there was a scene that got cut that, did he go to her tent or she go to his and said, it's kind of hot. You want to go for a swim? And so that set it up that we didn't see. But yes, It did look kind of odd that she was in the nightgown that she was in.
Yeah.
And then the thing that kind of bumped me, it was almost this diabolical, the press secretary, Kristen Scott Thomas, it was almost like a very mustache twirling.
Yeah, when she was kind of evil in that way.
Yeah, and it's like, what did she have against these two? But I think what it is she was so lusting after like the great photo op for her boss that she didn't care who was hurt in the path.
Right. Now, I don't know if this is part of that, but when you said bumped, it reminded me, I made a note that there's a scene early on where Kristen Scott Thomas's character, Maxwell, is at home talking on the phone. And in the background, there is an infantry rifle propped up against the wall.
Oh, that's right. I remember. I think that was a pause.
It was a pause because it was like, why would the press secretary have that weapon Now, if so, apparently the U.S. press secretaries are tremendously undergunned and they need to raise their stakes. But so is that, again, a prop to show that she is one tough cookie?
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good...
So if you were in charge of set design for this film, please feel free to contact me. I'm curious about that.
If you're the one that put the rifle up against the wall.
Yeah, whoever you were. I guess I was assuming it was set design, but could have been anybody.
So she establishes this press photo op where Harriet finds out that Robert is alive. And what I thought, because I read something in the trivia as we were watching the film, that she was going to do this. So I envisioned that the photo op would be kind of them presenting the dam, and Robert would come out and the press would catch Harriet's reaction to Robert being alive. But no, they don't even do that. They let Harriet see Robert. She runs across, of course, embraces him. She's so happy to see him. She thought he was dead. And then later they have like this photo op press conference. And I just thought, wow, for somebody who really wanted to stage a photo op, you missed the boat.
Yeah, they were talking about the foreign secretary being fishing as well. So I don't know if that was an attempt to show us that it's like this whole machine and that was just one small part of it.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I was confused by that part, but I loved it because Ewan, who up until now has shown us that, like you mentioned earlier, he's kind of been more reserved, a little bit more passive aggressive, not the thwarty, male lead. He pretty much goes to Robert and says, I love her and there's not a darn thing you can do about it. And may the best man win kind of
There's
speech.
A great interchange where Robert says, I'm sorry I'm not dead in a ditch, in a very kind of spiteful way. And Alfred says, I don't think I can accept your apology. that was that character in a nutshell, right? He was kind of giving it back, but I don't think I can accept your apology.
Nope, not going to do it.
Now, again, I'm curious to hear what our listeners think when they watch this film, because even though I'd already seen the film the second time through, I'm so upset at the prospect of Harriet ending up with Robert. Like, I want some of those like revolutionaries to pop out and shoot him dead. I don't like that guy.
Well, we have some terrorists, but they're not going to go after Captain Robert Mayers. They're going to go after the salmon. So after this scene where Ewan threatens Robert, terrorists break into the dam that everyone has just celebrated has opened, and we have successfully created this project where we brought so much water to the Yemen that people can now fly fish. But now we see just gates opening, and as they're doing the photo op of the press secretary and the sheik fishing, water comes around the bend, just a tidal wave of water crashing, killing salmon, killing some people, drowning the whole valley, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know much about hydroelectric dams, so I can't say whether or not that's an accurate depiction of what happens when you open the sluice gates. But in this particular case, it was considered, again, in the milieu of the film, that was how they were going to sabotage this project.
Right. And it gives Ewan another opportunity to save the sheik, because the sheik is almost going to drown, and Ewan pulls him up on the rock.
And what's great is right before that, they're both trapped against the rock, and Ewan says something to the effect of like, okay, I'll push you up on the rock. And the sheik says something like, no, I repay my debts. And so he gives Ewan the hand up, but then maybe would float away. And then there's the hand grasping and the this and the that.
It's very dramatic, you guys.
It is dramatic.
Should I not say sheik? Is it sheik?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, I apologize to anybody.
No way to know.
Yeah, I apologize from the bottom of my heart. Just an ignorant person saying it wrong, maybe. Okay, so after that, Ewan is so disgusted that he throws his rod and reel in the fire.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a statement.
If it was made out of bamboo, like traditionally would burn quickly, I don't know if carbon fiber, though. Maybe he could just pull it out and dust it off.
So the sheik really kind of gives up. He questions, why did we even do this? Look at what I've destroyed. He is feeling very remorseful that his indulgence and his kind of, one could say, display of wealth in this, way was a little
That's interesting, because I took it more as he felt like he didn't have support from the people. And so he was feeling bad that he'd done a thing that apparently some people really didn't want.
So he kind of gives up.
Well, there's a line through this that even occurred in the tagline about faith, right? He talks to Alfred, who is a man of science, and he doesn't have faith. But then at a certain point, he says, I think the fish will swim. And the sheik says, oh, well, you have faith, Dr. Jones. So
that's right. I forgot that. That's cool.
Actually, as I said it right there, I just realized that calling him Dr. Jones all the time, it reminded me of the Indiana Jones film series where he wears tan because he goes to the desert, right? So it's right there.
It's right there. So Ewan, everybody kind of goes back. Oh, no, they don't go back. But then Ewan is like, no, we have to do this again. And he goes to Harriet and he says, if we need to get the money, we'll get it from elsewhere. If the sheik doesn't want to do it again, we will find the money. This has to happen again.
Yeah.
And so then there's this beautiful shot of a reflection of their hands. It pans down and you see both of their hands. And I believe she takes Dr. Jones' hands, showing that she's on board. They're going to do it again. Which
is important. Now, this is not based on a true story, but the IMDb trivia...
It feels like it, though. It really does.
Well, that's, I think, because the person who wrote the novel that it was based on worked like in government press secretary kind of thing. So they had a good feel for it. But they did say in the trivia that right after this film came out, the Yemeni tourism board got a lot of calls from British people about fly fishing excursions. People thought it was a good idea. They wanted to go do it.
I love it. So aside from the assassin who kind of experienced some neck trauma, which is near the head, did we have any other head trauma?
Oh, yes, we did. Near the end of Act 1, when Alfred has met Harriet for the first time, he tries to have the very dramatic exit and walks straight into a window.
Oh, that's right. I think that one caught me off guard. Like I gasp out loud, I think.
This isn't a film where you would expect head trauma. So it played very well. Yeah.
And like Ewan sold it very well.
Mm-hmm.
How about some smoochies? I think we had a few.
Smoochy.
Now, are you going to discuss the ones between Harriet and Captain Myers?
No, they don't count. There's a cheek smoochie at 1 hour, 18 minutes, 28 seconds.
Right.
I think that was after the swimming.
Yeah, the swimming in the Yemen.
Mm-hmm. Yemen's women.
Did they? That's the only time they kiss? They didn't. There
it's
was
the only
never
one that I made a note
lip.
of. We have to factor in that I can be distracted.
Oh, okay.
I'm basically a 4-year-old.
All right. I was shocked if we didn't get the payoff at the end. I feel like when they, maybe they didn't.
Yeah, I don't know if they smooched on camera because they may have just gone for the handhold.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah,
subtle.
So I have to say, obviously, when you cast Ewan McGregor and Emily Blunt, you've got a lot of photogenic people to work with, and it was shot gorgeous. And so, to me, that ending worked well because of what led up to it and kind of the cinematography.
Yeah, maybe we didn't need
it
the
was
payoff.
fitting. Yeah, I think it worked.
And how about a driving review?
So there wasn't a whole lot of driving. I did want to mention, though, that at one point when they're in Yemen for the first time and they kind of drive up to the job site, they're in the back of this pickup truck as a jitney. It's got these bench seats, no seatbelt in sight. I do think that is an oversight.
Yeah, but is it like a school bus?
Again, school buses should have seatbelts.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Statement made.
And this isn't quite automotive, but it was kind of fun that when they show helicopters bringing in the brailers of salmon, the helicopter involved is called a Chinook in U.S. service. And Chinook is a kind of salmon. So I thought that was a fun little thing. It may be coincidental, but nonetheless kind of fun.
I like it. Very cool. Should we go over the numbers?
Let's do the numbers.
Okay. So this film in 2011 had a budget of $14.4 million. And domestically, it almost made up for it at $9 million, but definitely worldwide, they made some money when they brought in $34.5 million. So once again, another 3 times the investment. So that is considered a success in Hollywood. The IMDb score is 6.8. It is just under 2 hours and an hour 47 minutes. It is rated PG-13 and it is listed as a comedy, drama, romance. So this is probably not a rom-com.
I would say, I think it is. I really do think it
feels
is
like it.
because it's got the Bellamy, and I think we can make the argument that Alfred's love for Harriet makes him a better man.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the filming locations are Morocco, the Highlands of Scotland, where the Sheik's Scottish estate is, like Mike said, the South Bank of London, England, and Black Hanger Studios in Hampshire, England.
Mm.
It is a BBC film, and it was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture in a Comedy or a Musical, Best Performance by an Actor or Actress in a Motion Picture for Ewan and Emily, and it won the International Film Music Critics Award for Best Original Score. So you guys might have heard of it, but if you did not catch it, I'd say we give it a thumbs up if we were a rating kind of show.
Absolutely.
But we, as you've heard over the last few minutes, we like this one and would suggest you watch it.
Yeah, to be fair to the audience, I will say that I bumped it up a star in my review the second time watching it. So the first time I watched it, it didn't land as well for me. Don't know why. Maybe I was overwhelmed by hatred for Captain Robert.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much you don't like that character.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
So everybody, thank you for listening. Please rate, subscribe, tell your friends about our podcast. If you want to shoot us a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 971-245-4148. We would love to hear from you. Or you can shoot me an email at christy@dodgemediaproductions.com. All of this is in the show notes. And stay tuned next week when we will be talking about Gregory's Girl to finish out our Scottish movie month. And please help us increase those reviews so that I will post a picture of Mike from our wedding wearing a Scottish kilt. So don't miss that. Give us some reviews so we can get to 25 reviews on Apple Podcasts, please. And never forget,
Dodgers never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.